Good morning and welcome back to Sports Today. So, we bring you this video every single day to keep you updated on things that you might have missed out on whilst you were catching up on some rest. Because whilst it's important for all of us human beings to rest, the world of sport, well, it never really sleeps, does it? So, without further ado, let's get straight to it. And it's important we start at last night's IPL game, which took place between the Lucknow Super Giants and the Mumbai Indians. Now, LSG ended up winning a thriller of a match and kept themselves alive in the race for the playoffs. Their fate is very much in their own hands. They just need one win in their final match and they're through to the playoffs. But there was one particular moment that had a lot of fans buzzing, and that was, of course, when Pandya was actually struggling for form. You can say struggling to middle the ball, not able to hit the required boundaries, and ended up retiring hurt right after the strategic timeout at the end of the 16th over. And he did so whilst he was on 49. Now, it was pretty evident that he was struggling with cramps up until that point because he wasn't even able to run properly that last single which he took. But there was also a feeling among many that maybe, just maybe, this was something of a tactical move by LSG and Pandya himself. In fact, one of the people who quite clearly felt that it was a tactical move was Ravichandran Ashwin, who simply tweeted two words saying "retired out" with a question mark. Now, of course, you remember that in 2022, Ashwin himself had retired out in one particular match. Remember, he was unable to really hit the ball properly, so he retired out, let someone else come in and then do the heavy hitting. I'm pretty surprised it's not a tactic, or it's a tactic that's not been used by too many teams in this particular season, considering there have been quite a few times where batsmen have been struggling. They've been allowed to continue to bat anyway. But yesterday, quite clearly, many people felt that Krunal's, let's say, walking out was less down to injury and more down to tactic. Even more so when you consider the fact that he was bowling the opening over in the second innings. So obviously he could have recovered from whatever cramp it was he was feeling. But yeah, it did seem tactical and a way to ensure that he could retire or get out without actually being out. Because remember, if you retire out, it's counted as a dismissal. If you retire hurt, you can actually come back to bat later on if the team so needs it. Sticking to yesterday's match, there was, of course, a lot of talk about Mohsin Khan and the kind of display he put in that final over to defend 11 runs, ensured that the team won by 5 runs. It was a pretty good display on his part. He nailed his Yorkers and slower ones, and gave Cameron Green and Tim David, two guys who can clear the boundaries with ease, no space whatsoever to play any big shots. And afterwards, he actually did speak about, the kind of struggles that he's been going through recently. Remember, he played very well in last year's IPL, but after that suffered a big time injury, hadn't really been playing cricket for a year, and now made his comeback during this year's IPL, but again has looked scratchy at times, including in the last match that he played. Afterwards, he revealed the extent of the struggles that he's been going through, and I'll just quickly read what it is he said. He said that it's been a tough time for me as I was injured and I was playing this IPL after a year. He's also said that my father got discharged from the ICU and he was in the hospital for the last 10 days. So this performance really I dedicated to him. He would have been watching. So it speaks volumes to the mental toughness that Mohsin has, because again, he had a good IPL last time. Many were talking about fast tracking him to the Indian setup. He gets injured, doesn't really get to play any domestic cricket or follow up on that. Starts this year, didn't really do well, but again, even yesterday's match, early on, he was getting hammered, but then he came back in their hands as far as making it to the playoffs is concerned. One more bit of interesting news from, of course, the IPL is that you remember that there was this one shot that Suryakumar Yadav played during, of course, their previous match, the match which they had won against Gujarat Titans. And, it was a shot that left even Sachin Tendulkar speechless, because he could be seen gesticulating as to how it is that he'd played the shot. And Sky actually opened up on that shot and said that he did it, or rather he's saying that he had played that shot a few times, but in his mind. In fact, he was speaking to the digital broadcasters ahead of the game against LSG, and he said that I played that shot many times in my mind already. I always try to play the field or look at where it is that the fielders are set. That moment, the ball was where they had very few options in hand, and I knew that Shami, who was bowling at that time, would go for the Yorker length, and I was ready for that because I have played against him before. In fact, he did anticipate the Yorker perfectly, charged down, and then played like an inside-out shot of sorts over third man, which flew to the boundary. It was a beautiful shot. It was a Sky-esque shot, dare I say. And it's interesting to know the inspiration that he has behind it is that it's basically about playing the field and trying to maneuver where it is that he could find gaps. Pretty interesting shot, and I for one can't be the only person who hopes to see that shot happen more again in the future. Switching our focus now from the world of cricket to the world of football, and there was a pretty big result in the UEFA Champions League last night. Inter Milan beat local rivals AC Milan 1-0 in the second leg of the semi-final to seal their spot into the final, having won the tie 3-0 on aggregate. Pretty comfortable win for Inter, and incidentally, this is in fact the first time that they'll be making it to the final of the UEFA Champions League since 2010. Incidentally, 2010 was the last time they also lifted the title. So who really knows? Could very well be in the stars for Inter. Would be an underdog story for the ages if it were to happen. But let's hold our horses in that regard, shall we? Another interesting bit of news, and it concerns this year's Premier League contenders, Arsenal. They will in fact be seeing Granit Xhaka, who's been one of their skippers, leave the club for German side Bayer Leverkusen at the end of the season. You remember that Xhaka has come close to leaving the club on a few occasions before, but was reintegrated under Arteta, has had a very good season this time around as well. But it does seem like he's looking for a new challenge, and of course that new challenge should be a different club in Germany, because remember, he signed for Arsenal from Borussia Mönchengladbach. Another bit of interesting football news comes from Manchester United and Sheikh Jassim bin Hamad Al Thani, who of course is interested in buying the club. The Qatar banker who's interested in buying the club has made an improved bid for Manchester United, and this one is in the region about 5.5 billion pounds, which not only helps him take full ownership of the club, but will also clear off the club's debt. Now remember, they are up to nearly 1 billion pounds in debt, thanks to of course the variety of borrowings and whatnot that the current owners, the Glazers, have made. So it's an interesting bit. Does it put him in pole position? We don't really know, because the entire process really has been very, very secretive so far. But it's interesting to note that, well, he has made a much bigger bid and potentially outpriced whatever his rivals could have offered in this particular case. Last two bits of news before we sign off. This weekend marks the beginning of a triple header in Formula 1. There's the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, the Monaco Grand Prix, then the Spanish Grand Prix, all in the space of 3 weeks. But the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, which is held in Imola, could very well be under a little bit of threat. Why? Because the region of Emilia Romagna has been receiving torrential rainfall, and in fact there's even a red alert that has been issued. So not exactly the best of times to be doing Formula 1 racing. And in fact, Tuesdays, what normally happens is that the entire paddock will actually descend, and they'll put out, they'll set up, they'll do their entire setups on around Tuesday, Wednesday, and then the press conferences start. So the paddock had assembled, but unfortunately they had to leave the racetrack because the rain was so much that there was no way that they could have set it up. There is expected to be no rainfall come the weekend, although there is some worry that there might be a little bit of flooding in certain parts. But really at this point, anything could happen. We don't know if the rain gets better or worse in the coming days. If it does, then well, you could potentially be without the race come this Sunday. Hopefully that is not the case. One last bit of news from the world of tennis. Iga Swiatek, who's been in dominating form during this particular edition of the Rome Open. She is in fact through the quarterfinals after having beaten Donna Vekic in straight sets. Not just that, if Swiatek were to win it, this would be her third straight win in Rome. So it's clearly a tournament that she enjoys playing, and it bodes well for her preparations for the French Open, which is of course the next Grand Slam coming up on the tennis calendar. And that's it from us for this edition of the Morning Update. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Again, if you enjoy our work over here at Sports Today, please don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, tap that bell icon, leave us a comment, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Don't forget to download the SportsTech app as well, where you'll get all of this news at the tip of your fingers. Plus, if you're already here on the channel, go ahead, check out some other videos that we've done. For now, from my side, goodbye.